Welcome to Grace Design. Today, we're going to take a quick look at the M908 multi-channel monitor controller. The 908 is our flagship monitor controller, designed for speaker systems with up to 24 channels, from stereo to Sony 360, Dolby Atmos 22.2, or any format in between. The 908 provides a full complement of monitoring features, including Q channels, built-in talkback mics, and mono, mute, and dim controls. A powerful DSP section allows for 12 bands of parametric room correction EQ on any channel, or variable numbers of bands per channel totaling up to 85. The 908 also has comprehensive bass management features and individual channel delay. And the 908 is built on our legacy of reference audio design, so the audio performance delivers impeccable clarity and detail. The M908 system consists of a mainframe audio control unit, remote control unit, and a power supply with dual redundant universal input power modules. The front panel of the ACU is simple, with only a headphone jack and a power indicator light. All of the controls for the 908 are on the RCU, which is based on our M905 stereo monitor controller, but scaled up to accommodate added features and playback channel count. The standard 908 setup offers a total of 68 digital input channels, 24 channels of AES-3 on DB25 connectors, stereo AES, Toslink, and SPDIF inputs, 16 channels of ADAT light pipe, and 24 inputs over USB 2. An option card slot allows for an additional 32 channels of I/O with a Digilink, Dante, AVB, or Ravenna card. Up to 16 channels of analog input are available with the addition of optional 8-channel ADC modules. The ADC in position 1 is also connected to the stereo-balanced XLR and unbalanced phono jacks, so that it can be used for monitoring stereo sources on channels 1 and 2. And if an ADC option module is installed, the unbalanced jacks can be switched to phono level, provided the RIAA phonograph preamp module is also installed. Any combination of 24 analog or digital input channels can be used simultaneously at sample rates up to 192K 24-bit. These can be routed through the 908's DSP processor, modified as necessary, and then sent to any combination of 24 analog or digital output channels. The 908 comes standard with 24 channels of digital output over AES and 16 channels of analog output on these 3 DB25 connectors. The first 2 DB25s are both sourced from DAC channels 1 through 8. They are relay switched, meaning only one set can be active at a time. This allows you to use the same output routing to 2 separate monitor setups and to switch between them using the CR1, CR2, and CR3 buttons. Using just analog outs 1 through 8, you could have 2 distinct 7.1 setups and still have outs 9 through 16 left for Q mixes and stereo down mixes. And if you're working in stereo, then of course the same signal path and outputs can feed multiple sets of speakers. The third DB25 connector provides balanced analog output signals sourced from DAC channels 9 through 16. These outputs can be for speakers in immersive playback systems or for Q outputs. Q outputs have level control, assignable talkback summing, and monitor to Q routing. Monitor to Q sends the left and right signal from the current monitor signal to the Q output. In the case of multi-channel monitoring, the left and right signal or a stereo down mix can be sent to the Q output. The 908 talkback section offers a variety of options. Talkback signals from either the RCU mic or ACU will be present on any of the designated Q output channels, and that same signal appears here on the talkback output balanced analog XLR. The talkback mic input balanced XLR is a balanced microphone level input with available 48-volt phantom power. This signal is fed to an ADC and sent to the DSP section, and can also be sent to the talkback output XLR connector when talkback is active. Finally, there is an external talkback switch jack with 1/4-inch TRS. Wiring a normally open switch to this jack will allow for another talkback control. The ring of this connector carries current limited 5 volts for powering a tally LED. Below that is an Ethernet control port RJ45 jack, which is used for connecting to our M908 web control interface. Next to that, the RCU serial control DB15 port for connecting the remote to the ACU. This is a custom cable which carries data, power, and analog headphone signal, and is not compatible with any off-the-shelf DB15 cable. We supply a 25-foot cable with the 908. Other lengths and specialty cables are an option. The USB host connector is for system firmware updates. External word clock in BNC is selectable to 75 ohms or 47K ohms in the startup menu. Output clock signal can be a buffered copy of the incoming word clock or can be from the internal word clock. Control Room 1 and Control Room 2 output balanced analog signals sourced from DAC channels 1 through 8. Control Room 3 output provides a balanced analog XLR output signal sourced from DAC channels 1 and 2. The M908 remote control unit, also referred to as the RCU or simply the remote, is designed to be a seamless interface between the user and the audio control unit or ACU. There's a ton of power in the 908, a lot of which is accessed with button holds, pushes, and combinations. We'll go into more depth about certain functions in other videos. For now, we're just going to skim the surface and talk about the basic top-level functionality. On the left side here, we have a large color LCD screen which shows system status, functions, and all the available setup menus. Above and below the screen are 2 rows of 4 input selection push-button switches, which have corresponding labels across the top and bottom of the screen. Pushing these switches will select between the inputs of the M908. When an input is selected, it will be blue on the screen. There are actually 16 available inputs, 2 banks of 8. To access the other bank, simply push and hold the lower right input switch, which has the small white arrows next to it. This will toggle you between the 2 input pages, 1 through 8 or 9 through 16. The small dots here on the bottom right of the screen show you which page is being displayed. These input switches also control other features, like summing several inputs together or making level offsets of a particular input. We'll get into more detail about these later on. The big knob is the volume control for the control room and headphone outputs. It's also used to navigate setup menus and has a push-button function. During normal operation, the push-button function will toggle between control room and headphone level. These are the control room speaker select switches, labeled CR1, CR2, and CR3. Pushing these selects between your different speaker systems, with the active speaker switch being lit green. With the 908, each of your speaker systems can be stereo, 7.1, or any configuration up to 24 channels. The talkback switch activates the talkback microphone on the remote and/or the talkback microphone input on the ACU. The signal from these microphones will be summed onto any of the Q paths you may have set up on your 908, allowing you to address anyone monitoring on the Q outputs. Talkback is either momentary or continuous, depending on how you use the button. A quick hit will engage continuous mode and leave the talkback on until you hit the button again. Pushing and holding engages talkback until you take your finger off the button. These switches, dim, mono, monitor to Q, and mute, control the basic overall monitoring features of the 908. The first 3 switches also have a secondary function shown by their smaller text below, which is activated by pushing and holding the switch. Dim will lower the control room and headphone output levels by a preset amount defined in the setup menu, and will light up yellow when dim is active. Pushing dim again will return to the normal output level. Pushing and holding dim will toggle on and off the crossfeed circuit built into the headphone output. Crossfeed is a feature which simulates monitoring and acoustic space when using headphones, and is really useful if you work with headphones a lot. The mono switch will sum the left and right channels of the speaker and headphone outputs. The button turns solid orange when engaged. Checking a mix for mono compatibility is really useful, but this is just for the left and right channels. If you're using other speaker channels, they continue to play as normal. Pushing and holding the mono switch will enter left minus right, a feature that subtracts the right channel from the left and presents that signal to the output. Like the mono control, this will only affect the left and right channels. This is a really useful feature for checking for and identifying mixed phase issues. The button flashes orange when you're in this mode. Monitor to Q routes the currently selected control room monitor source to the Q outputs. The switch will light solid green when active. This function can be enabled or disabled for each of the Q outputs. Also, The send to the queue outputs can be the left and right channels of the current monitor source, or a stereo down mix if the source is in surround. Pushing and holding the monitor to queue switch will clear the SPL meter peak level. And finally, the humble mute switch, which mutes the control room and/or the headphone outputs depending on how it's set up. The switch lights up red when it's active. This is without a doubt the finest sounding, ultra-low noise, low distortion mute circuitry we have ever designed. The setup switch has two functions. A short single push gets you into setup mode. The button flashes and there is dialogue on the screen. In this mode, pushing any of the function buttons gives you access to the settings associated with that function. We have a video just on the 908 setup mode, but as a quick example, with the setup button flashing, if I push CR1, the screen displays the current settings for control room 1. The volume knob becomes my encoder. Dialing the knob left or right moves me through the settings. Pushing the knob allows me to change the setting, again by dialing the knob. In some cases, there are multiple layers of menus. The knob will allow you to scroll through these and select and change parameters. A long push, or push and hold, takes you to System Workflow mode, where you can configure and reconfigure the 908 to whatever your working mode is, or how you have your studio set up. This is a more complicated section, so I'm not going to go into any detail here. We have a video that's just about workflows and how to use them. Finally, on the right side, we have these 9 bicolored solo mute switches, which are used to solo or mute any individual or group of speaker channels being monitored. Each of these switches engages solo or mute for the relevant channel, except the solo mute switch here, which is used to toggle between solo or mute mode. The solo mute switch is green for solo and red for mute. Pushing any of the 8 speaker buttons will solo or mute that channel depending on the status of the solo mute button. You can solo or mute any or all of the channels at the same time. The 8 solo mute switches cover a 7.1 speaker setup. However, if your speaker system is larger than 8 channels, these switches can page to the higher order channel counts. Pushing and holding the RB or LB buttons will cycle you through the pages to the higher and lower order channels. The current solo mute page is indicated by the 3 small dots in the middle of the speaker layout section of the LCD display. A little more about the screen. As we mentioned earlier, the top and bottom of the LCD display area show the input sources available for monitoring, which correlate to the above or below input select switches. The currently selected input will be blue, or with input summing mode active, the selected inputs will be green. The control room speaker system layout window displays an icon-based view of the currently selected speaker system. There are 4 types of speaker icons. Any front, surround, or back speakers are shown by the standard-looking speaker icon. Top or overhead speakers are shown by the round donut shape. Subwoofer channels are shown by the diamonds. And finally, any height speakers are shown by the narrow vertical icon. Each icon also acts as a signal level meter, with white for no signal, green with signal over -60 dBFS, yellow with signal over -12 dBFS, and red when 0 dBFS or over. In the lower center area of the speaker system layout window is the solo mute page and status. The word solo will be shown in gray when the system is in solo mode, and will turn green when a speaker or speakers is soloed. Likewise, the word mute will be shown in gray when the system is in mute mode, and in red when a speaker or speakers is muted. The name of the currently selected control room speaker system is displayed directly above the control room monitor level. This name can be edited in the setup menu. The current control room monitor level is shown here in large numbers and will be green when the volume encoder is controlling the control room level. The default range is 0 to 100 in 0.5 dB steps. 0 is mute and 96 is unity gain. This level can also be displayed with a user-defined reference level, so your volume readout can be calibrated to a specific SPL. Pushing the volume knob switches between control room volume and headphone monitor level. The current headphone monitor level is displayed here in small numbers, which will also be green when the volume encoder is controlling the headphone level. If headphones are disabled in the system workflow, then the headphone monitor level display will read "Headphones disabled." The headphone crossfeed circuit status is displayed in the upper right corner of the headphone's volume display window. In case you missed it in the button overview, you can turn crossfeed on and off by pushing and holding the dim button. The sample rate display shows the sample rate detected on the input connector. If the input data or sample rate are invalid, then the sample rate display will be blank. The clock status window displays the current clock source and indicates its status by changing the color of the text. Using the built-in microphone on the RCU, the m908 displays a real-time sound pressure level reading based on the system configuration. The current peak and SPL levels are shown here, and the filter mode here. The peak SPL value can be cleared at any time with a push-hold of the Monitor to Cue SPL Clear switch. When talkback is in use, SPL monitoring is turned off, and the built-in microphone becomes the talkback mic. The SPL display area will indicate talkback active. When you exit talkback, the SPL meter will return to normal operation. That's all we're going to cover in this video. There's so much more to the 908 that we'll be doing deeper dives in other videos. Check the Grace Design website or subscribe to receive notifications when these new videos come out. Thanks for watching.